My name is Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible, published by John Wiley & Sons, the largest book ever written on the subject of social media. And today we're lucky enough to be here with David Meerman Scott, author of The New Rules of Marketing and PR, How to Use News Releases, Blogs, Podcasting, Viral Marketing, and Online Media to Reach Buyers Directly. And also published by John Wiley & Sons. And today we're going to be talking about how social media has affected conventional marketing and PR and the value of social networks. So, David, thank you for being with us here today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Lon. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, that's great. Can you just give us a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing, and a little bit especially about that great book of yours?
Yeah, so early in my career, I worked at a bond trading desk in New York City, and this was actually way before the internet, and I actually used online information in the early 1980s when virtually no other business was using online information, and I totally got to understand how online information caused people to make decisions, because we were making trading decisions every minute based on what we were seeing on the screens. And then I worked for a company called Knight Ridder. At the time was the largest newspaper company in the United States, owners of Detroit Free Press, Miami Herald, Philadelphia Inquirer, newspapers like that. So I had this, basically several decades of experience with online information in all of its forms, and also as a marketer. I was a marketing vice president for several publicly traded companies, and in 2002 I set out on my own to kind of combine those ideas of how online information drives people to make decisions, and also how marketing is changing as a result of the web, and honed those ideas down into some books and a business, giving speeches and running seminars and helping people to make use of these ideas. And basically, what I boil it down to is a really simple concept. The concept is that prior to the web, we only had a couple of options to market our products and services. We could buy expensive advertising, and that advertising, could be all sorts of different forms. It could be magazine advertising, newspaper, radio, television, yellow pages, billboards, direct mail. All of them required a huge investment. Mm-hmm. Or we could use the media as our mouthpiece and beg reporters and editors at magazines, newspapers, radio, and television to write about our stuff. Mm-hmm. Those are really the only two options we had. And the web now allows us to publish great stuff ourselves and reach our buyers directly in ways that we could never do before. It doesn't require a huge investment. We can create blogs. We can comment on other people's blogs. We can create YouTube videos and podcasts and all sorts of different ways to reach people that we never had available to us in the past.
Wow, that's exciting. And you had mentioned how people are making decisions online. So obviously the social media tools that you've been talking about is influencing the way people are making decisions online.
Yeah, exactly. And not just online. It's interesting. In practically every speech that I give, I start off the speech by asking a series of questions. And I say, how many people in the last 1 to 2 months have answered a direct mail advertisement? And roughly 5 to 10% of the audience has. And then I say, how many people in the last 1 to 2 months have gone to a trade show as a participant in order to learn about products or services that you might want to buy? And again, it's 5% or less. Mm-hmm. And then I'll ask how many people, in order to research products and services or solve problems, have turned to mainstream media, magazines, newspapers, radio, television. It's around 20%. Then I say how many people, in order to research products and services or answer questions and problems, have gone to Google or another search engine. It's 100%.
100%.
And then I ask how many people have recently asked a friend, colleague, or family member online to help them research a product or service they might want to buy or solve a problem, and that the answer that came back from their friend, colleague, or family member was a URL that they then linked to, and that's usually just under 100%. It's like 95%. So what that tells me is that the ways that people are making decisions today are utterly different than the ways they used to. so if you're still doing the traditional stuff of buying advertising and using the media as your mouthpiece, that's still important, but it's not the main way that people are solving their problems anymore or researching products.
And the other thing that I heard that you say in there is that when a person asks a friend how they research or about a particular product or service or topic, they usually send them a URL.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely. You know, you say to your friend, "Gee, when you took your last vacation, where'd you stay?" You know, then often. And usually that question, by the way, these days is asked either by email or through Facebook or some other way of networking online. And the answer that comes back isn't, "I stayed at the Seaside Princess Resort in Costa Rica." It's a link to that place's website.
So I'm hearing two things here. One is that the social media tools are providing access to information online and the importance of it, but I'm also hearing this trusted network kind of linked in here as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination, because what it requires is that organizations give some serious thought as to what kind of content they want to create online. You know, websites have traditionally been just pieces of brochureware, I call it. You know, basically just your brochure turned into an online brochure on the web. So the first step is really to make sure that you've got a compelling web presence. And that's not just putting your brochure online. It's things like, you know, taking the example we just used. If you're running a seaside resort in Costa Rica, maybe you want to have videos of what the waves crashing on the beach look like, or the pretty birds in the trees that are nearby, or, you know, what the bar looks like, and there's photographs of that. You can have comments left by the guests. I mean, all sorts of different things you could do. But the point is that it has to be really interesting information on your site or in other social media tools like YouTube or whatever. How about this idea, a podcast of the birds chirping in the morning as everybody's waking up? I'm just thinking of these things off the top of my head. And the second thing is then to make sure that social networks are aware that you've got that content, and that means things like commenting on other people's blogs. It means making it really easy to share. In other words, you don't try to put a gate on your interesting content. You make it freely available. All sorts of ways that you can then get people to share the interesting information that you've created.
So the other thing that's kind of cool here that I'm interested in, it's a kind of a repetitive theme, is when I just had Ben Jariola, who is the 2007 SEO world champion.
Wow.
And yeah, he's a really cool guy, world champion SEO expert. And it was funny. He was telling us all these tools and techniques, but really what it kept coming down to, and I think I'm hearing it here as well, is content is still king. You have to have engaging content. What's in it for me? Takeaways for your customers.
That's right. And I think we often get bogged down in the technical details, and that's been a bit of a beef of mine about search engine marketing for a while. Is that search engine marketers? Not all of them. There's obviously, if you're world champion, you're not doing this, but many search engine marketers just focus on the technology behind search engines and don't focus on the creating really interesting content. You know, they'll come to you and say, "Well, I'll fix your site and I'll make it better for the search engines." Well, if you take a crappy site and then you search engine optimize it, you're going to end up with a slightly less crappy site. And
at least one easier to find.
And a crappy site that's easier to find. So yeah, it always comes back to the content. More importantly than the content, it comes back to the buyers, the people that you're trying to reach. And that's a really important concept for all of this kind of marketing. Is that I always tell people when I'm delivering my presentations that nobody cares about your products and services. They really don't. It doesn't matter what business you're in. Nobody really cares about your products and services. What they care about are themselves, and what they care about are solving problems that they've got. And so the best online content is content that's created specifically for your target audience, for your buyer, what I call your buyer personas. And in the case of that seaside hotel we've been using as our example, the first thing that popped in my head a few minutes ago is perhaps there's different buyer personas for seaside resorts. There might be somebody who makes a decision themselves of what hotel they're going to stay at. Yet another buyer persona might be somebody who works in a group tour organizing company and is looking for a hotel for 20 people from a church group that's going to go down to Costa Rica in this winter. And those are two very different buyer personas. Maybe require two different types of content. And if you're just talking about your product and service, your hotel, you're going to talk about it's got a pretty swimming pool and it's got fluffy pillows. But that's not necessarily what someone who's trying to make a decision for 20 that needs 20 different rooms for a group tour that's going to be going down to that hotel. So it does totally come down to understanding who the buyer personas are, what problems that your organization solves for them, and then creating content that addresses those problems, which will drive people into the sales process.
That's a great insight, because too often we focus on our features and not really hear what our customers are, or solving their particular problems. Like the classic marketing, we don't sell drill bits, we sell the ability to make a hole.
Yeah. Well, I actually think of it a little bit differently, because a lot of people, you use the word customer, and you may not even have realized that you use that word. In my world, a customer is someone who's already buying your products and services, and is a very different person than a prospect or someone who is not yet your customer.
Good point.
And for companies that focus exclusively on their existing customers, that can be a really big problem. Now, let's go back to the hotel again. If you're running a hotel and the only people that you do research with are the people who are staying there, what are you going to learn? You're going to learn that people are bitching and moaning because the pillows aren't soft enough. And then you'll spend $1 million getting the best pillows in the entire world, when people who aren't at your hotel couldn't care less what the pillows are like. They want to have a beautiful view, or they want to be able to relax for a week, or whatever it might be. So getting bogged down with your existing customers' requirement is actually a bit of a negative. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't talk to your customers and help them. Of course you should. But if you look at your target market as a really big pie, typically in most businesses, your existing customers is a very small sliver of the pie. The other people who know you but are not your customers is a tiny sliver of the pie. The vast majority of the pie, in some businesses it's 99%, are people who don't yet know who you are and are not yet your customers, and that might represent a humongous slice of that pie, and creating information for them is how you're successful.
That's a really, really good point, and I'm glad you emphasized that. Earlier I spoke with David Knorr, the author of Relationship Economics.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I like David.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. And he's got a great concept. It's not only just about the economics of the relationships that you have in business and people that you know and acquaintances, but he also stressed that kind of what you were saying as well, is that the relationship with the prospect is as important sometimes, or even more important, even so, than the relationship, and has more value than maybe the relationship with existing customers.
Yeah, yes. And another really interesting facet of this, and something that's not talked about very much, is sometimes the buyer and the user of a product are different. Here's an example: tricycles. In some cases, tricycles that are built for 3-year-olds, the user is a 3-year-old. That person isn't making the buying decision to buy that tricycle. The buying decision is being made sometimes by parents and sometimes by grandparents.
True.
So the way you market a tricycle is not how the tricycle works, because that's what's important to the 3-year-old. The way you market the tricycle is it safe? Is it at the right price point? What happens when my kid outgrows it in 6 months? I mean, there's all sorts of different things to think about when you're marketing a tricycle. Fast forward to somebody who's in their 70s or 80s, now in retirement villages you see these adult tricycles for people who don't feel comfortable riding a 2-wheeled bicycle. They want to still get around using their own power, and they use these tricycles. And now in this case, the buyer persona and the user persona is the same. Someone's making a decision about a tricycle that they themselves will use. And those are two very different marketing problems. Mm-hmm. One marketing problem is, how do you market to somebody who's going to make a purchase decision but isn't the actual person who's going to be using the product? Very, very different than an example where you yourself are making a purchase decision for a product that you will be using.
That's true. Like dog food, for example, is kind of a classic example. It's the owner, the dog, that's actually making all of the decisions, not the dog, but the dog still has to like the flavor of the food.
Yeah, right.
And one of the companies that I had, I developed pretty much all the technology for physically disabled to access computers and environmental and voice recognition. And one of the things that I learned, and I'm emphasizing the point that you just made, because I learned it the hard way, and it took me the better part of 10 years, is that when you market to the physically disabled, especially the severely disabled, they never were made the buying decision. It was almost 100% done by either the family members, the insurance company,
right,
a government agency, educational facility. So really, how do you market to those 5 different people with different perspectives, completely different demographics, and then still satisfy the end user customer as well?
And that would be, I would strongly argue that it's 5 different sets of marketing.
That's great, and we have
because each one of those have different. Each one of those people are different buyer personas.
Different needs.
The family member versus the caregiver versus the insurance company. 3 very different buyer personas.
So that's one of the things we really need to recognize as we use these tools, the social media tools, that each of our demographics, first of all, recognize them and appreciate the value of those relationships, and then use them appropriately by sending the proper messages. Join the right groups, comment on the right blogs.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Great. I'm learning a lot. Thank you very much, by the way.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. This is, I think this stuff is so fascinating. The other thing that's so cool about everything we've been talking about is it liberates us. As if we're a business owner, if we're a marketer, an entrepreneur, independent real estate agent, pastor of a church, singer-songwriter, it doesn't matter who you are. This is a liberating idea because all of a sudden we can do this stuff ourselves. It doesn't require a huge dollar investment. It doesn't require hiring agencies to do mysterious work for you. I mean, this is stuff we can all do ourselves, and it's just incredible to me that all of a sudden let's say the tools of the kingdom are ours. They're no longer in the hands of the TV companies or the big Madison Avenue ad agencies or the public relations agencies. I mean, this is stuff we can all do ourselves.
And that's what actually excited me when I first started learning about social media a couple of years ago. When I first heard about it, it was like, wait a minute, we can do all of this. We can do it ourselves. We've got our own syndication. It's RSS. And the bottom line almost is it's free.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what a lot of people who have been dismissive of these disruptive ideas have said is, well, yeah, I don't read blogs, I don't do that, so it doesn't matter to me. Well, guess what? Remember, we mentioned this earlier, is everybody goes to Google or the other search or another search engine to solve problems, answer questions, research products. Everyone does. So it's not a matter of, are you on a blog? That's the wrong question. The right question is, do you go to a search engine? Everyone says yes. Yeah. Yes, and many people go there first before they're ever going to go to Yellow Pages or somewhere else to research a product. So why not, just recognize that these two things are converging. One is it's so easy to get your information out there, and 2, that's exactly how everybody is answering their problems today.
That's a good point as well. Anytime I see that they've delivered the local Yellow Pages, I live here in Phoenix, and it's actually in 2 huge books because of the number of people here now. And I know that day when I see it on my front door, that I'm going to go in the back door of the house because I have to walk past the recycle bin.
And it's going to be in the recycle bin.
Yeah, we never even cracked the cover of it.
I know, it's incredible. And it's a huge, I don't want to say it's a waste of money because some businesses being in the Yellow Pages may make a lot of sense.
RVs.
But there are a lot of people in the Yellow Pages where it just doesn't make sense, and they're spending a lot of money to advertise there, and they think they've got their bases covered. And yes, there's a percentage of people who are researching products through the Yellow Pages, so we don't want to dismiss that. However, There are a huge number of people who who do what you and I do, which is stick the thing in the recycle bin, never go to the Yellow Pages. And what we do is we go to the web, enter a keyword, query, and that's where we find the answers to our problems. And the companies that are obsessed about the Yellow Pages and not trying to create information that the search engine will find are going to be losers in the long run.
So if somebody come up after one of your presentations and said, you know what, I don't know anything about social media, I don't know anything about this new marketing and PR, and maybe it's a small business, maybe it's an individual business owner, there's 72 million single-person businesses in America today, or maybe even medium or larger size companies, and he says, how do I get started? Where do I start looking? What do I do first? What direction would you point them in?
The first thing I say is that it's a really good idea to forget about you, forget about your company, forget about your products, forget about your services, and instead focus on your buyers. Focus on the people that you're trying to recruit to become your customers, and understand from their perspective and from their point of view what their problems are. Understand that, for example, if you're there's a little company around the corner from me that makes and sells fresh pasta, and they're not in the business of making fresh pasta. They're in the business of solving the problem for people who want to make a really quick, healthy, and organic meal. So once you understand what you're really doing for people, then you need to be thinking not like a marketer, not like an advertiser, but think like a publisher. And for some people, this can be a little bit difficult. But what I normally try to encourage people to think about is what kind of creativity do they like? Do they like photography, for example? Do they like shooting videos? Do they like to write? Do they like to speak, and maybe you can do a podcast like we're doing right now? Or do they have someone they can call on to help them? Because maybe they can't do it themselves. Maybe they need to bring in their brother-in-law or bring in the next-door neighbor who's a college student to help them out or something. But it doesn't require that you automatically jump into, let's say, writing a blog, which is, you read a lot of business magazines and they'll say, social media, blogging, you got to create a blog. And I actually don't believe that. I think there's lots of different ways that companies can get involved in this stuff. And it may be as simple as, if you enjoy photography, to use photography somehow to bring to life what it is you're doing and what your business is doing for people.
That's really a great insight as well, because one of the things I'm learning is that the most successful social media tools, whether it's a blog or a blog, are the people that you can sense sincerity and passion.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's no question that passion is the most important thing. You can have spelling mistakes. You don't need to be very savvy on the technology side, but if you've got a passion for what you're doing, it shows through.
I like that. What are some of the misconceptions or pitfalls or things that you would have to kind of watch out for? How would you warn somebody who's just getting out there?
I think that often people get hung up with what the experts tell them, the so-called experts, and I think that often people focus too much on the technology side. They're really worried about making sure that everything's right on the technology side, and they think they need to hire somebody for a lot of money to help them with the technology. And I think that that's the last step. Worrying about the technology is the last step. And by the way, that doesn't need to be a big deal at all. I mean, you can open up a YouTube account, get what's called a flip video camera, record a video, shoot it, upload it to YouTube. You can literally do all of that in an hour. Yeah. The very first time, just by following the simple directions on one of these cameras. And you don't even have to have any kind of special setup. These cameras are $150. Yeah. I did a video a couple of weeks ago where I held the flip camera out at arm's length and shot myself, and posted it up on YouTube. And all of a sudden, it's got 4,000 or 5,000 people who have seen that video. So the biggest pitfall, I think, is just getting hung up on how difficult this kind of thing can be, if you've got a problem with technology, and some of us do, see if you can find someone to help you with the technology side. But ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, you really need to understand how you can make your passion for your business shine through on the web. And there's a number of different ways that can be done.
So kind of what I'm hearing is A, don't overanalyze it, and B, like the famous sports shoe slogan, just do it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Because guess what? If you do it and it doesn't really work out, so what? You didn't lose anything.
That's a good point. If you look at Robert Scoble, he grabs his video-enhanced cell phone and actually walks up to vice presidents during conferences, and that's his videos. And they're absolutely awful, but the content is so good you put up with the technology.
Right. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, went out with him, and it was in San Francisco. He and I went out and did some of those interviews live, and they are really low rent, low tech, but they work.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he knows a lot. Robert knows a lot about technology, but he's living proof that you don't need to obsess about the technology. It's about what's underlying it and the passion.
Content is king again. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any specific companies, results, success stories that you might have observed where people actually took some of our advice about social media and kind of benefited from it?
Oh, I've got tons of examples. I mean, some where I know the metrics. I mean, one that I really like, and it's a pretty famous example, but it's really fun to talk about, is the Blendtec example. So Blendtec is this Utah-based blender manufacturer. They created a series of YouTube videos called Will It Blend? They're shot in-house at their company. The star of the show is the president of the company called Tom. His name is Tom Dixon, and he and it's free to put a YouTube video up. So they did these things for free, and they've caused the sales of blenders in the consumer market to go up fivefold. So here is a great example of an organization that took a chance, did something, put it out there. Perhaps worried about making fools out of themselves, but they did a great job with it, and the payoff is that their sales have gone up fivefold.
It's absolutely amazing. The first video that he did was where he stuck that oak rake handle into the blender.
Right.
And it looked like a wood chipper.
Yeah. And it's just so unbelievably cool and visual. Now, if they had done the same thing as a blog without the video component, nothing would have happened. So they chose the right media, which is interesting.
Absolutely. And then I saw that within less than a week they had 1.2 million viewers. Could you imagine in conventional marketing and public relations what it would cost you to buy 1.2, and not impressions, but focused actual viewers?
Right. Exactly. And that's the whole point.
Wow. I love social media. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So just to kind of conclude here, what else, is there anything else that you'd like to say to kind of summarize, conclude, that you think might help our listeners understand what we're talking about a little better?
Well, I think one of the things that I talk about as a way to give people an idea of what we're discussing, what this sort of thing means, is to think of the web as a city, and to think about how your business is positioned in that city. So here's what I mean by that. Think of a typical city. You've got all sorts of stuff going on in the city. You've got people who live there. You've got stores on Main Street. You've got businesses. You've got clubs, that people belong to, the golf club, for example, and whatnot. The same thing's true of the web. You've got all sorts of things going on the web. And I look at analogies from one to the other. So eBay is like the garage sale. Amazon.com is the bookseller. Yep. Craigslist is the bulletin board that you've got when you walk into the supermarket.
Or the giant nickel.
And then you've got, individual companies have websites. Those are like the store windows as you walk down the street. There's all sorts of different components of the city. There's the underworld in the real city, and there's the world of porn and spam on the web. So all of these social media things we're talking about are like the bars and the saloons and the clubs and the pubs of the city. So the golf club and the local bar and the restaurant and the places that people hang out. These are the places that people hang out and do things and get to know their friends and have online discussions. So if you imagine you're in a city and you're a landscaper, sure, you can do business by doing a Yellow Page ad, but you can also do business as a landscaper by joining the golf club and by going once a week to the local tavern and sharing a beer with the guys who are there and getting to know people that way. So if you're at the golf club every weekend and you're at the local pub every Monday night, people get to know you, and guess what? When they need some landscape work done, guess where they're going to go first?
Sure.
The concept is exactly the same when it comes to social media. If you're out there and you're making friends online, you've got a blog, let's say, or you're commenting on other blogs, or you're participating in forums and chat rooms, or you're doing a podcast, or you're creating videos, or whatever it is, and somebody needs your product or service, they're going to go to you first because you're a known quantity, and that's what this is all about. And as I said earlier, it's just unbelievably liberating that we can do this. It's just really cool that you can become online collaborators with people, and in turn they'll do business with you. And it's just something we haven't experienced before in our lifetimes, at least. It used to be that this was the way people did business. You went to the town square and you bought a chicken. Mm-hmm. And then we had the big mass media aberration where you advertise Crest toothpaste on television. That's what everyone bought. Now we're back to where we were before, except it's all online. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I just kind of actually realized that point myself that you just made is that in the term social media, the key word is social. And
right.
As human beings, that's part of human nature.
That's right.
To be social. And over the last 10,000 years, the way we communicate with each other, the tools have changed. But really, it gets down to the basic human nature to connect with another individual.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's why we don't want to make too big a deal out of the technology behind it, because it's really just about what's the best way for you to communicate.
I like that. That's really good. David, could you tell our listeners where they can find out more information about you, what you're doing, how they can hire you?
Absolutely.
Get your book.
I'm a huge believer in giving stuff away for free, so the first thing to do is to go to Google and type in the phrase, The New Rules of Viral Marketing, and you can get my free ebook that way. I've got a blog, which is www.webinknow.com. That's WEBINKNOW.com. And those are two really good places to start. My book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, has been out since June of last year. It's done really, really well. It's been a top marketing bestseller and is now being translated into 19 different languages.
Oh, congratulations, David. That is so exciting.
Thanks.
That is great. I'd really like to thank you, David. Meerman.
Thank you, Lon. This is fun.
We had David Meerman Scott, author of New Rules of Marketing and PR. Go buy that book. It's cool. And it's also published by John Wiley and Sons. And thank you so much for sharing those incredible insights. And,
thank you.
Thanks.
When does your book come out?
Actually, the manuscript is due November 1st, and we're looking at an April 1st
Good.
Release.
Good.
So, yeah, we're doing our homework here.
Excellent.
So this has been Lon Safko, the co-author of the Social Media Bible. Please be sure to check out other valuable social media tactics, tools, and strategies that can be found in the Social Media Bible book, as well as our companion website, www.thesocialmediabible.com. For more information about me, Lon Safko, and how I could speak at your organization, please, by all means, check out my website at www.lonsafko.com. And again, David, truly, thank you so much for sharing those great ideas with us today.
Oh, great. Thanks very much.
Thanks.